hope you can see me okay. Really great to have you all again for another project. Now, I'm just going to double check that you can actually see my screen. It seems like it's showing up as dark for you. Why is that? Let me see if I can change that for us now. Let me know if you can actually see my screen. It'll be funny if you actually can. But on my preview display, it seems to show me that you can't see my screen yet. I wonder what's happened here. I'll just wait another second until someone gives me a bit of confirmation, and then we'll get started. Oh wow, thank you to everyone that's here. Please comment, say hi. It's really great to see you all. I wonder if you can see me now. Yeah, you can't see the screen yet either. Hi Ria. Hi Ivan. Will. Marzena. Wow, everyone's here today. That's so sweet of you guys. Thank you so much. Well, I'm just going to check why the screen isn't showing. Hey everyone. This is really, really cool. Thank you so much. Well, I'm gonna see if I can change this at all. I wonder if you can see me now. I think you can now. Oh my gosh, I hope you can see me now. That would be, I think I solved it. I think I solved it, everyone. That was so scary for a second. I was holding my breath, but I think you can see the screen now, everyone. Samira's here too. Hi, Samira. Wow, everyone's here. This is so cool. Well, thanks so much for joining. This is actually such a special project as well. So to know that I get to have you all here for an exciting project like this one makes me really, really happy. So yeah, a big shout out to Will, Ria, Marzena, Iman, Samira. Let's get started. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about website delivery with CloudFront. So if you're new to CDNs, content delivery networks, if you're new to CloudFront, just know that this project is extremely beginner friendly. Think of this as your introduction to CloudFront. Now, CloudFront is a very, very special service. I kind of think of it as a networking service and as a content delivery network. Think of CloudFront as almost like a deliverer of your website to the world, or a deliverer of any kind of resource or application you want to spread out globally. We're going to talk about, what is CloudFront, how is it different from static website hosting, why do people use it, all in this project today. Thank you everyone for saying you can see the screen now. That makes me so relieved. All right, so let's get started. So in today's digital world, fast and reliable websites are crucial. You've probably felt that, you've probably had that feeling before where you're just really excited to try something out. Oh, but the website is loading slowly. Oh man, like you're trying to type something, but then the text field isn't really populating with all of your text straight away. When digital experiences are slow, it's so easy to make your users frustrated. It can even turn into lost business. Imagine if a customer walks away from your application or your website because the loading time is too long or the application is just too slow. That's why content delivery networks like Amazon CloudFront are like a business's secret weapon for delivering content quickly and efficiently around the world. So when you think of CloudFront, think of it as making it available across the world, and especially think of it as really high performance, really high speed, just a very quick way of getting your content out to your users. All right, so in this project, how are we going to be using CloudFront? Well, we're going to be actually using CloudFront to host our website. So you might have done one of our projects before that's about hosting a static website on S3. And in this project, you're going to be doing something quite similar, but by using CloudFront. The cool thing about CloudFront as well is you won't have to be hosting a static website. You can definitely host entire web apps applications as well, which S3 probably isn't as able to do compared to CloudFront. So what we're going to start with is we are actually going to be setting up an S3 bucket to store our website's files. At the end of the day, CloudFront is about distributing, like just spreads it out to the entire world. S3 bucket is about storing. So we actually still need to store our website files somewhere, and that place is going to be the S3 bucket. We have 3 files this time to make our website. We have index.html, style.css, and a script.js, and we're gonna get to know script.js later in this project series. We're gonna store all these files into our S3 bucket. Okay, and once they're stored, how are we going to deliver this website into the entire world? We're gonna actually use CloudFront to do it. We're gonna link up CloudFront with S3 and say, hey CloudFront, can you please deliver this content to the entire world and also deliver it very fast to my users? By the way, that content is inside my S3 bucket now. I've stored it all neatly in here for you. Very cool. CloudFront's gonna say, okay, yes, let me deliver that content. And surely that just means we have a distributed website at the end. Not quite, not quite. There's always some permission settings, some security things to sort out. So before we can really see a distributed website, we actually need to be setting up some really cool permission settings. This is called Origin Access Control, OAC. It's quite unique to CloudFront, I think, so it might be a new concept to you. That's okay, we'll go through it together. And then we also need to update our S3 buckets policy as well to let in CloudFront. So once we do this troubleshooting, which basically means give CloudFront access to your S3 bucket, once CloudFront finally has access, then it can actually distribute the content worldwide. So that's going to be the journey that we're going to take today. We're going to first create that storage space in S3 for your website files. We're going to set up CloudFront to distribute your website globally. And then we need to do a bit of permission management. So that's going to be the main part of our project. And we also have a secret mission as well that lets you compare using CloudFront and using S3 static website hosting. So you can really see the benefits of using CloudFront. I love this project. It is such a great introduction to CloudFront. I hope this is a great roadmap. You're excited to do this too. Chuck a little yes in the chat if you're excited for this project. If you have any questions about what we're about to do, add that question too. And on that note, we have Maurice in the chat asking, do you ever do Azure? Ooh, Azure's coming in the future for sure. We're focusing on AWS, and eventually we will be adding Azure content to NextWork for sure, but probably not like immediately. This is probably more something that will happen in the future. But thank you, Maurice. Oh, we got a yes from Ria. Thank you. We got a yes from Eric. Very nice. Really cool to see that the both of you are up and ready for this project too. Okay, so drumroll please. You might have noticed that just now I also mentioned that we'll be doing more about, we'll be talking a little bit more about script.js later in this series. So what is this series that we're doing? This series is actually a 3-tier architecture series, something that is so highly requested, in the NextWork community. If you're new to 3-tier architecture, just know that 3-tier architecture is just about splitting an application into 3 essential layers. You have the presentation tier, or the presentation layer, which is what we're doing now. And then there's also something called a logic tier and a data tier. Why 3-tier architecture is so, highly requested or so in demand is because a lot of applications today are built in this way. You want to separate out presentation tier, what the user can see and interact with, and then separate out the logic tier, which is kind of like your backend and the actual processing of information, and then separate out the data tier, which is where you store and secure your precious customer data or product data. And by separating all of this out, you're pretty much protecting your application from having multiple parts that might cause one to fail or cause the other part to fail. Before 3-tier architecture became a thing, it was really popular to set up applications in a way where, if there was an issue with the front end, easily like the data tier, the logic tier could get affected or could go bust too. And that really isn't a great sustainable way to build your application. You would want to build it in a way where if there is something that goes wrong in the presentation tier, maybe that error can be contained within that tier, and then the logic tier and data tier can still live on its own. And yeah, this project about CloudFront actually sits inside the presentation tier too. So it's about building up this face of your website. And later on in this series, we'll connect it with a backend and also a data tier as well. So you have a fully functional 3-tier architecture. I find that really exciting. The next 2 parts are really fun as well, by the way. Really excited for you guys to do it. Okay, so now that we are ready to do this project, let us select the high touch mode. All right, so we can go through every single step of this project together. All right, and this is the part where I'm just gonna switch screens a little so we can actually focus on the project guide on the right-hand side of the screen. And then you can see my AWS console on the left-hand side. Okay, I think you can see everything now. This is awesome. Great stuff. Okay, and I'm just gonna resize a little window so you can still see everything. Okay, very cool. Boop. Alrighty, so let's get started. Before we start step 1, what are we here to do today? Ooh. In this project, we will demonstrate how to use CloudFront to deliver a website globally. We're doing this project to learn about CDNs, maybe, content delivery networks, and to set up the presentation tier of a 3-tier architecture. Big shout out to Samira. I wish I was able to do the Kubernetes and Terraform practice as well. Ria says same. Yeah, those 2 projects are also part of our Pro Project collection. If you'd like to check out the demos for that, they're also in our YouTube channel, Samira. I hope you enjoy those demos too. All right, so now that we've set our intention for the day, let's get started with step 1, everyone. So we're gonna start by creating that storage space for our website files. We're going to be creating that S3 bucket that's eventually going to store our website's index.html, style.css, script.js, those 3 files. If you're new to S3, just know that S3 is a go-to service for storage, storing all sorts of things, all sorts of data in the cloud. You can think of it as a massive, secure, reliable hard drive in the sky. I'd also highly recommend checking out our project on hosting a static website with S3 if you haven't done that yet. It's highly relevant to this one too. Cool. So in this step, we will set up an S3 bucket because this is the storage space for our website files. Great. All right. Now let's log in to the AWS Management Console. I am a cheeky step ahead because I've already logged in now. But you can easily use this link in the project guide to log in, and log in as your IAM admin user, please, not as the root user. It's always best practice to log in as your IAM user. We'll also make sure that you're in the AWS region closest to you. So I'm picking Ohio for today's project demo. And I'll let you pick the one that's closest to you too. You can pick from a large list of AWS regions. All right, and when you're ready, we'll go straight into setting up that bucket in the S3, console. Cool. Let's go straight into creating that bucket. So I'm gonna select Create Bucket here. And then we're going to add a unique bucket name. Now, it is so important to have a completely unique bucket name. Does anyone know why? Do you want to add to the chat if you know why it is so important for your bucket name to be completely unique? In the meantime, I'm going to replace this placeholder, your name, into, I guess I'll keep things general, name. And then random numbers, 1, 2, 3. Ideally, this should set up a completely unique bucket name for you. Cool. And once that's done, leave all the other settings as default. We'll come to them later if we need it. And then we'll just create the bucket straight away, And Ria has a great answer for my question. Yes, that's right. So your bucket name needs to be globally unique. So in the entire world, there can only be one bucket that has that name. It doesn't matter which region you've created that bucket in. Just know that across all regions as well, you can only share one bucket for each name. And the reason for that is because this is slightly off topic now. I'm just sharing a bit of fun fact around this. I'm going to go into that unique bucket we've created. Do I need to refresh to see it? Oh, it's right here. And the reason for that is because where did that go? The reason for that, as you can see, the ARN or the resource name for a bucket is completely unique to just S3. So just go S3 ... NextWork 3-tier name 1, 2, 3. Usually a resource might have an AWS region in their ARN. And when that happens, it means, you can have a unique bucket just within your region, as long as that region name is inside that ARN as well. But the way Amazon S3 bucket ARNs are set up, it just uses the name. So you really can't have two buckets with the same name, otherwise they share the same ARN, and all the references to that bucket will be extremely messy. It's did I mean this bucket or this bucket? So that's the reason why your bucket name needs to be completely unique. Alrighty, so once that's done, once that's created, we'll just answer a cheeky question. What do we do? Why are we using an S3 bucket? We started the project by creating an S3 bucket to store our website's files. We can't use CloudFront for this task because CloudFront is not a storage service. It is a content delivery service for objects that live somewhere else. I guess for objects that are already stored somewhere. Okay, so let's go through that response again. We started the project by creating an S3 bucket to store our website's files. We can't use CloudFront for this task because CloudFront is not a storage service. It is a content delivery service for objects that are already living somewhere else. All right, so that's the reason why we're starting the project with S3 instead of CloudFront. So now that we have this bucket set up, we'll fill it with the actual contents of our website. These website files include, HTML files, CSS style sheets, JavaScript code, any other assets you want to put into your website. And to get there, let's actually fill in this first, and then we'll actually go through those steps. In this step, we will upload our website's files into the S3 bucket because these files make up the website that we want to distribute. No website files equals no live website. So we definitely have to upload some website files for anything to be showing when we want to host our website. Okay, done. Cool. So to get those website files, all you have to do is download them straight from the project guide. So right-click on each link and select Save Link As, so you can save it. Let's save the index.html. Let's save the script.js. Let's download the style.css. Cool. If you're new to those file names, just know that index.html is that main file for a website. It's where you organize, okay, my website should have this heading, it should have this text. Over here, I want to put in this picture. You're kind of like writing out the structure for your website. And then style.css over here at the bottom of the list. This one is about the visual appearance of your website's HTML elements. So you want to say, I want my heading to be this big. I want this text to be pink. I want this image to be super wide. And this is everything that you get to control within style.css. Now script.js might be slightly newer to you. It refers to a JavaScript file. And JavaScript files adds interaction to your website. For example, I want, when you push this, when a user clicks this button, I want to submit their form responses over here. Well, I want, when a user hovers over this, I want this element or this picture to jiggle. Anything that adds a bit of interaction, so it's not just a static experience. You're not just almost like reading a PDF. You're kind of interacting with the elements. You can submit files, you can get data, you can make things move, all of that stuff. And that is script.js, which we've also saved into our local computer. Cool. Are we ready now to upload those files back into S3? So now that we have them locally in our computer, it's still not inside our S3 bucket yet, so we'll still need to upload those. So a great best practice to do when you're just about to upload something into S3 is that you should actually verify what you're about to upload. One way to do this is let us right-click on index.html and go open with, and open this file with your browser straight away. Can you see a simple web page when you open this file? Okay, if you can't see this page, congratulations. It means you've downloaded all 3 files perfectly. You know, you should be able to like enter some user ID. You can even click get user data, which probably wouldn't work yet because we haven't really set up the backend. But that's okay. All right. Now that we've verified it, let us write that response on the files we uploaded. The 3 files that make up my website are index.html, which outlines the text and images, i.e. the structure of my website, style.css, which adds styling to HTML elements, and script.js, which adds interactive elements like form submissions. Really cool. Next, how did you validate your website files? Oh, funny you asked that because we did open that just now. So we validated that our website files work by opening index.html locally on our browser. We saw a simple web page without errors, so the 3 files can be uploaded into S3. Nice. All right, quick check in the chat. How is the project going for you so far? Are we following along okay? Has there anything that's been a bit confusing? Is there anything that we want to ask? Please add that to the chat. Or if it's been going well so far, give me a little thumbs up. That's super, super helpful too. All right, thank you so much. Cool. So are we setting up a static website? So a static website can consist of a set of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files that serve website content. Sometimes it might be easy to assume like, oh, if there's a JavaScript file, then it's not a static website anymore because there's interaction. But I think something to clarify here is that whether a site is a static website or not a static website, like a web app, depends on where that code is run. So static websites don't need to communicate with any sort of backend service or backend cloud resource. You don't need to communicate with a backend that is grabbing data from a database for you. You don't need to be communicating with maybe a Lambda function or another EC2 instance to do some processing for a transaction. If you are doing all of that code, if all of that code is being loaded on the user's browser, then it's considered a static website. Or another way to say it is if all of the logic is run on the client side, then it's considered a static website. Web apps, on the other hand, will have to execute some code on the server side. So apps that use databases, apps that use APIs, Lambda functions, where there is some code that's being run on the server side that's not being run on the user's browser or the client, that's when it's considered like a web app, when it's considered not a static website. So think of it this way, where's the code being run? Is there any code that's being run in a backend here? Yes, if that's yes, then it's not a static website. If no code is being run on any sort of backend, all the code can be run on the user's browser, on the client, then yeah, it is a static website. Cool, so I hope that kind of definition helps. In this case, we haven't actually set up a backend yet, have we? There's no Lambda function, there's no database, nothing. So what we've uploaded here technically makes up a static website. Once we do connect it with a backend and there's some code that needs to be run on the backend, then that means we are setting up a web app here, not exactly a static website anymore. Cool. All that yarn to finally say let's upload the website files. So we'll just add the files over here, grab it straight from our downloads folder, and let that upload. Great. I'm going to select upload straight away. Cool. So that upload was a major success, and we can take a screenshot of it. So let's take a screenshot of our files getting uploaded, and let's drag that into our project guide. All right, done. Cool. We have 2 questions that just came through, so maybe I can talk about them now before we move on to the next step. We have a question in the chat from PTYT, hello, asking how to protect from DDoS in static web hosting here. I do not want to wake up with a 1K bill. Ooh, good question. Protecting from DDoS, I think we can actually set up a project on this, on like website and application security. In general, you should be able to do this with the free tier. I won't leak all the steps, but maybe you can go into the AWS free tier website, look at that security section of services, and you should be able to find a service that can help you with protecting a site. Sometimes making sure that sometimes you might need a network service like CloudFront or Route 53. But I think there should be a security service that can help you there. We will have to actually set up a project, I think, to go through all the steps there. But PTYT, if you have any specific questions about DDoS that you want to know about, let us know. Tahir asks, I love your style of explanation. Thank you, Tahir. Can we have contents for AWS certifications, like a series for each major certificate? Ooh, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, right now, all of these services that we're doing definitely covers a lot of ground for the cloud practitioner and the solutions architect certificates. I mean, if there's anything that you want to do for a certificate that we haven't covered yet, can you add that to the chat? We're actually wanting to know what kind of certificates are students really interested in right now. And we have Samira asking, how about a project on Docker? Good question, Samira. So we actually have a project on Docker right now. You can find that it's called, I think the project name is Containers on Elastic Beanstalk. Yeah, so the project name doesn't reference Docker, which I can imagine why you might be like, oh, where are the Docker projects? But that project is all about Docker too, actually, not just Elastic Beanstalk. So I'd highly recommend checking that one out, Samira. Actually, in fact, you can go into our project, into our website, nextwork.org, and then you can, in here, search Docker like this. Okay, and you'll be able to see all the projects that reference Docker very easily. Yeah, so definitely containers on Elastic Beanstalk. There's this multiplayer project you can try as well. I would say these two are the best projects to get started with Docker. Samira is also asking about an AWS Academy. And that is something that we haven't planned for yet, actually. Right now, I would say if you're looking for credit, it is best to look for other sources there. I would imagine that things related to like AWS credit, when they do come, it will be related to like our NextWork PRO students or top community members as well. All right, and PTYT finishes by asking, I'm currently hosting on Cloudflare, very great platform as well, as they have free egress. I would really appreciate if you make a video on this topic. Of course. Let me actually note this down right now, PTYT. I think I'm going to note this down that we're going to do something on DDoS. So that we can come back to it in a future project. All right. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that slight pause in our project demo today. But let's get going. We'll now start step 3, which is about setting up a CloudFront distribution. So what we've done so far, we have successfully uploaded some website files into S3, and now we'll get to the CloudFront part of this project. So don't forget, S3, storage, CloudFront, distribution. So once we have put our website file somewhere, we're now asking CloudFront, can you please just deliver it across the entire world for us? Cool. So in this step, we will set up a CloudFront distribution because this is how we will distribute our website files globally. Great, let's go. Marzena, thank you so much for that shout as well. About registering for like online events or other programs for free AWS credit. Thank you so much. Cool. So to get started with the CloudFront part of this project, let's visit the CloudFront console. And I'm going to open it in a new tab because we're going to go back into S3 very, very soon later in this project. So welcome to CloudFront. What is CloudFront all about? CloudFront is a content delivery network, so it speeds up the distribution of your web content like HTML, CSS, JavaScript files, image files, all of that. And how does CloudFront actually do that? You know, why does it have this secret power to speed up the distribution of our things? Well, this technique is called caching. Caching is a process of storing copies of a file in a cache in a temporary storage location so they can be accessed more quickly next time. CloudFront uses caching, so it caches your website content in multiple servers around the world, and those servers are called edge locations. When a user requests content that you're serving with CloudFront, so let's say a user wants to visit your website, the request is routed to that edge location, the closest server to them, so that the content is delivered back to them very, very quickly. This provides the lowest latency, so the lowest time delay, and the content is truly delivered to the best possible performance. All right, so all that to say, when you are using CloudFront, what CloudFront is doing is it's distributing your content all across the world. it will put your content in a server in, let's say, a random part of New Zealand, and it will put it also, serve it also somewhere in a server in the US, somewhere in India, somewhere in, let's say, somewhere in the UK, somewhere in Canada, somewhere in Australia, somewhere in Singapore, all over the world. And what's going to happen is when a user from different parts of the world wants to visit your website, instead of their request traveling all the way to your S3 bucket, which is stored in a specific region, don't forget, for example, my bucket is inside a, my bucket was hosted, I think, inside Ohio region. Instead of that request needing to travel from wherever they are in the world all the way to the Ohio region or where that bucket is hosted, you will actually need to just get that request to that closest edge location, that closest server. Because of that, the request also gets a response very, very quickly. I hope that is very clear on why CloudFront works and why it's so useful. Add it to the chat if you have any questions about that. All right, so let's kick off an answer here. Amazon CloudFront is a content delivery network, which means it delivers content, web content especially, i.e. website files, to, let's say, which means it caches web content to edge locations around the world. Businesses and developers use CloudFront because it speeds up their website performance. All right, so now that that's done, we'll just create a CloudFront distribution now. So while we're here in CloudFront, we'll click on Create Distribution. And if you don't have a distribution set up yet, you might be looking at it from the main page like this. And you can absolutely just click on Create a CloudFront distribution like this as well. And under Origin Domain, we'll select the S3 bucket from the drop-down list. Oof, can you find your S3 bucket? I can find our one, NextWork 3-tier name. Nice. And we will also enter a special name for the origin. Ooh. All right, so for the name, we're gonna enter NextWork 3-tier S3 bucket. Now, what is a distribution actually? So a distribution is a set of instructions that tells CloudFront how to deliver your content. We're creating a distribution right now, so we're creating a set of instructions that tells CloudFront how to deliver some content. And here are the instructions we're setting up. We're like, hey CloudFront, let's distribute some content. This content lives here. Okay, these are all the instructions we've given so far. But there are so many instructions that you can put in your instruction sheet, and you can think of that instruction sheet as your distribution. But now that we have set up the origin, which is the most important part, you know, where does the content actually live, and we've entered the name, we can actually take a screenshot of our setup so far. Okay, so I'm going to take that screenshot and I'll drag that into the project guide. Cool. And next up, what is a distribution? All right, so to use Amazon CloudFront, you set up distributions, which are instructions that tell CloudFront how to serve or how to deliver your content. We set up a distribution for our website, and the origin is our S3 bucket. Nice. So once that is set up, we're going to keep origin access over here as public. And what that does is origin access basically means how are you going to access the origin? How is CloudFront going to get access to the S3 bucket that's here? And here we're saying, oh, the origin access is public, so the bucket must allow public access. That's the reason why CloudFront can get access to the to the bucket too. Cool. I'll just repeat that again because this concept is pretty important in this project. What is origin access? Origin access is about how CloudFront is going to get access to that S3 bucket. We've selected public, which means CloudFront can get access to the S3 bucket because the S3 bucket is going to enable public access to everyone. So naturally, CloudFront would have access too. You're going to notice that there's something that's recommended here that's called origin access control settings. What is this? Interesting. We're going to come back to it later, but for now, just know that it's a new method of authentication that is a more secure way of getting CloudFront access to S3. As you might imagine, if the bucket allows public access, it means literally anyone in the world will be able to access your bucket's objects. Is that the safest way to make your website, to connect your website or to connect your S3 bucket to CloudFront? No, it's not really the safest way to do it. Because now anyone can also get access to the bucket. They can start to do malicious things to it when all you're doing is just connect CloudFront itself to S3. So origin access control is another way to connect them that makes sure only your CloudFront distribution can have access to the S3 bucket and you can block everyone else. So it's no longer public access to everyone, it's just exclusive access for CloudFront. We're coming back to this later, but we'll leave public on for now so that we can show, so we can have fun with a little permission setting later on. Okay, so we'll also leave the default settings for add custom header. We'll leave the default settings for default cache behavior, and cache behavior is all about how you handle the caching or the saving of content at your edge locations. Cool. And I'll just pause here for a second in case anyone has any questions about that, because I know that talking about origin access can be a little bit tricky. I think it's one of our first times seeing this concept. Cool. If we're okay, then we'll also scroll down here and just know that you don't need to change anything in cache key and origin requests either. So cache key and origin requests, just out of interest, cache keys are used to differentiate between different versions of your content. So you'd use cache keys to say, oh, can you cache all versions of requests to my website that have this in the URL, for example. Can you also cache this kind of request to my URL separately as well? Like, I want to cache all of these differently. And then origin requests is basically how requests are sent to the origin server when content isn't available. So what happens if someone that's based in Brazil, for example, wants to see your website, and actually the edge location in Brazil doesn't have a copy of your content yet? Where should that request go? Well, the request should definitely go back to your S3 bucket now, and there are lots of different ways that you can set that up. How should it go to your S3 bucket? As you can see, as a networking service, CloudFront can get really, really complex as well with all the different settings that you can use. Thankfully, we don't need to set all of these just to use it. We can skip all of these and just keep the defaults to head on over to this section at the end. That's about the default root object. Okay, so this default root object is about the specific file in your S3 bucket that your CloudFront distribution should point to. So you know how when you visit nextwork.org, there's absolutely a page that welcomes you. If you visit youtube.com, facebook.com, anything, there's going to be just a welcome page or a landing page that welcomes you. And that's because the URL is set up with a default root object. So when they just go to nextwork.org, no nextwork.org /this/that. It's just nextwork.org itself. What is the page that they should see? So for our website, we only have one page. It's just index.html. So that's going to be the default root object. But imagine if you have many, many, many pages in your website. You would use the default root object to be very specific and just say, hey, if they land on my .com like URL, just take them to my home page, home.html, for example. We'll just keep things simple though. Index.html is great. Cool. And let's create the distribution. Off we go. Oh, I just realized I skipped this part about web application firewall. All right, apologies team. So web application firewall, or WAF, is all about security here. So WAF protects your website from common threats, like it could protect your traffic from IP addresses that are known for malicious behavior. WAF is honestly, or web application firewall, is not just a concept in CloudFront. Absolutely, it is a concept in your local computer. It is a concept in a lot of different browsers. So you can absolutely look into WAF if you're very interested in like website security, which I think PTYT is also interested in. But it's all about protecting your website from potential threats that are out there. You can even click on info if you ever want to know more about a specific setting for AWS to show you like a bigger explanation of what you could do with this setting. Here's a little handy tip. But yeah, for us, we will actually, so like we don't want to enable security protections because WAF will charge you. Look, it's estimated to cost $14 a month, for example. But we're going to just say, let's not enable security protections because we're going to shut down this website very, very quickly too. Okay, I think we're ready to create the distribution now. And while it's deploying, while we're waiting, we can actually answer this question too. How did you set up your distribution? Ooh. My CloudFront distribution's default root object is index.html. This means that when users visit my website's root URL, they will see the content inside, they will see the content described in index.html. Awesome. So as you can imagine, look at all of these interesting features that come with CloudFront. You know, we explain CloudFront as the service that distributes your content, and it seems simple enough. It's like, okay, yeah, just grab my content, distribute it to the world. But the moment you're setting up your distribution, you realize that there's so much going on here. You know, it's about, okay, where is the content? Let's set that up. How do we cache that content? Let's set that up. What about security? Web application firewall. Let's set that up too. So you can see that there are actually many, many layers that comes with setting up CloudFront or a content delivery network. Cool. We're gonna have to just wait for that status to change to deployed, which might take a few minutes, but that's okay. We can definitely talk about something else in the meantime. Awesome. Okay, that was a great tea break. All right, in the meantime, let's just introduce step 4 as well. Step 4 is about verifying your CloudFront distribution. Whoa. Now that the distribution is created, surely we can go check if it's working now. Can we see the website? Well, is it gonna work? Let's find out. In this step, we will verify the CloudFront distribution because we've just created it. And we want to check whether it's working. Nice. Okay, so while we're still here, you can actually copy the distribution domain name like this. Copy it. So this is the URL that CloudFront will use to serve your website. So you can think of it as your website's domain name right now. Copy that, and then you can paste that domain name into your web browser. Cool. Paste it here. Oh no, our access is denied. That doesn't look too good, does it? Okay. Let's have a think about this. Why is it? Why is it that access is denied? Why do you think you ran into an access denied error? Would you like to add your suggestion to the chat? We can wait for a minute or two. I love to hear what people think, why we're seeing this access denied error. Ooh, I think we're feeling a little shy. Are we not sure? Oh, we have Eric asking because we need a bucket policy. Ooh, very good suggestion. But what is the bucket policy going to be about, Eric? What do you think the bucket policy need to say? PTYT says, don't know. That's okay. Most likely IAM. Whoa, good thoughts there, PTYT, for sure. You know, IAM is the go-to site if you're wanting to resolve any access denied issues, for sure. I can't imagine how many projects we've done where we had permission denied, access denied, and we had to resolve that with IAM. Ria, great suggestion. Make ACL public for the bucket. Yeah, this was the way that we could make our objects public and make our website, you know, accessible, or we can resolve this access denied error in one of our previous projects about hosting that static website with S3. Very, very good point, Ria. So ACLs actually aren't the only way for you to make your objects public. There's another way too, and that is the way that Eric has mentioned, bucket policies. So I'm gonna tie together all three of your responses here, Eric, PTYT, and Ria. Great suggestions. As Ria mentioned, we need to make our objects public, okay, in that bucket, or we need to make it accessible by CloudFront. How are we gonna do it? We're gonna do it by using a bucket policy, like Eric has mentioned. And where is that bucket policy? Well, bucket policies are actually a part of IAM. You can see them in the S3 console, but they're definitely like an IAM tool as well, being able to define your bucket policy using JSON. So we're gonna be doing that in the next step, but let us talk about why access was denied in this part first. Cool. We think access was denied because we haven't set up a bucket policy. Maybe we should make ACLs public for the bucket. Could look at IAM to resolve this. That's our guess. All right. So why is access denied? All right. Overall, the reason for this is because CloudFront doesn't actually have permission to access the S3 bucket yet. Okay. CloudFront is trying to go into the origin, the S3 bucket, to grab the content, the website files, and host them, you know, make it available to the world. But S3 is saying, stop, access denied. So because of this, the only thing that CloudFront can show in the distributed website is the access being denied. Okay, so let's take a screenshot of this access denied error. Okay, and let's add that to our documentation. Great stuff, team. Done. All right, so to resolve this error, we're going to grant CloudFront the necessary permissions to access the S3 bucket. Okay, we're now going to go into the CloudFront console to set up that cool thing called OAC, Origin Access Control. And that's going to be the tool that lets us get access to our S3 bucket. Let's see how. In this step, we will set up an Origin Access Control, OAC, in the CloudFront console, because this will be the tool that grants us access, that grants CloudFront access to the S3 bucket. Great stuff. So let's head back to the CloudFront console now, team. And over here, we're gonna select origins and see that you can already find your S3 bucket as an origin. An origin is basically where content is stored. Let's select that. Okay, and select edit over here. Great work. So you can see that origin access, remember, is set as public. Okay, right now it's set as public. If origin access is public, it means anyone in the world can access your content directly from the origin, your S3 bucket, not just through CloudFront. So this can pose a huge security risk because someone can also just SSH and access our buckets objects. It can pose a security risk if data is quite sensitive. You don't want people to actually access the files themselves. They might even be able to manipulate the files if they have the ability to actually do that through SSH. So because of that, we actually don't really want to choose public as our origin access. We want to choose something else. But back to this question, if we have origin access as public, why is it that we actually still see access denied? So the reason for this is even with origin access, the setting being set to public, the actual objects inside S3 can be private. So we are saying here that CloudFront will get access to the S3 bucket because the S3 bucket is public to everyone. But is that actually true? Is the S3 bucket's objects actually public to everyone? No, it's not. So we actually still need to manage S3's permission settings separately from CloudFront to connect the two. It's more that origin access is us telling CloudFront, oh, no worries. Don't worry about getting access. Just know that the bucket should be public. Whether or not the bucket is actually public and the objects are actually public is another matter. Okay, so in our case, we told CloudFront, yeah, the bucket's objects should be public. That's how you should be getting access. CloudFront be like, oh, okay, then let me go straight to the bucket and grab the objects. And now CloudFront's gone to the S3 bucket, said, hey, I heard your objects are public. You're allowing public access. Can I get the website files? And S3's like, no. My objects are not public. What are you talking about? Access denied. And because of that, access is denied for us in our distributed site. Okay? So with this knowledge now, let's explain why we're even seeing this access denied message. When we tried visiting the distributed website, we had an access denied error. And why was that? It was because CloudFront did not have permissions to the S3 bucket, or really to the origin. My distribution's origin access settings were public, which meant the bucket needs to be public too. which is not true, which is not the case. Oof, I'm running out of characters. How do you think I can shorten this? We tried visiting our distributed website. We ran into an access denied error when visiting the distributed site because CloudFront did not have permissions to the S3 bucket. My distribution's origin access settings were public, which meant the bucket needs to be public too. Not the case. We had a great suggestion. Ask Llama to make it short. Is Llama an AI tool, PTYT? All right, so we're now just gonna change that setting from public over to origin access control settings. Okay, has always been the recommended way by CloudFront, so we're doing what CloudFront wants. I hope it's happy. So normally, if you want to serve those files publicly, the files need to be publicly accessible by S3. So this is what happens if we chose that public option up here. And we mentioned those files could potentially expose your S3 content to unwanted access, security threats. That's the reason why we're actually going to switch over to origin access control settings. So this is a special user that AWS will create for CloudFront that prevents this. And OAC lets you keep your S3 bucket and its objects not publicly accessible, while still making sure CloudFront has access. It's such a special little tool. You can think of OAC as this user that gives access to CloudFront. And we're saying we're going to keep our S3 bucket private. So we're no longer going to assume that the bucket must allow public access. The bucket can now be private, but we're still going to make the bucket accessible by this user that we've set up for CloudFront. And this user will be able to take those permission settings and give CloudFront access too. So what this really means for our bucket's security settings as well is it means we can close off public access, we can keep those intruders and potential threats away, and access can still be available to CloudFront itself. So that's awesome. Another reason why OAC is so helpful is because it can give you really granular control over how CloudFront accesses the content. You can add other authentication or security settings using OAC because you can use OAC like any other user. And you can use some very, very specific, for example, JSON policy settings to alter like how CloudFront can access your bucket too. We won't go into that level of detail for this project, but we will be talking about how we can use OAC in general. Cool. So I hope that was clear. Please add to the chat if there was anything confusing about OAC. You can always also highlight this all and use our simplify tool, okay, to read about OAC in a different way. You know, it's a special user account for CloudFront. It lets you keep your S3 bucket and objects private while serving them through CloudFront. Perfect. That sounds great. All right, team. I am going to now take us to the next question here. What is OAC? So to resolve the error, we set up OAC. OAC is a special user that's created to connect S3 with CloudFront, i.e. give CloudFront access while still keeping out public access to the buckets objects. This improves our contents. This improves security for our content. Awesome, we'll keep it this way. To resolve the error, we set up Origin Access Control, OAC. OAC is a special user that's created to connect S3 with CloudFront, which means it gives CloudFront access, while still preventing public access to the buckets objects. This really improves bucket security. Nice work, everyone. So under that new Origin Access Control setting, or Origin Access heading, we have now selected OAC. And here, Origin Access Control is where we can actually figure out what is the user that we're going to be creating. Now, it's unlikely that you will have an Origin Access Control and OAC already, so that's why we'll actually be selecting Create New OAC here. Okay? So good. So let us create that new OAC. In that description, we will actually just keep everything, the default settings here. In sign requests, we'll just keep that here as well. It's the recommended way. And signing is basically whether or not you would want the request to be signed by CloudFront. So it's a very, very special tool. It basically means when a request hits CloudFront, you're wanting to access the website, that request is actually going to be signed by CloudFront to say, CloudFront verifies that this request comes from a true source, it's not a malicious person, all good. Okay, my stamp of approval is here, signed. And then when that request goes to the bucket, or when that request goes to wherever your origin is, the origin can check for the signature and say, oh, okay, it's been signed by CloudFront, it's legit, I can actually serve my content to that person. And then when CloudFront serves that content, it will cache a copy in those server locations too. Cool. And so we'll just create the OAC here. Nice. And what does this pop-up say? Oh my gosh, we have a little pop-up over here. It tells us that you must allow access to CloudFront using this policy statement, so on and so forth. Whoa, there's a policy here out of nowhere. This pop-up is telling you that just creating an OAC isn't enough to give CloudFront access to your S3 buckets objects. You also actually need to change your S3 bucket settings. So this is what Eric was saying in the chat earlier about using a bucket policy. Again, don't forget, origin access is what we tell CloudFront. This is how you should be getting access. We're now telling CloudFront, oh, you should be getting access through OAC now. You should be all good. But is that access also set up on the S3 side? Not yet, everyone. So our S3 buckets objects are actually still completely private right now, even to CloudFront, because we still need to open up access to CloudFront from the bucket side. Because of that, even CloudFront has prepared this policy that you can just copy and paste straight in S3 to give CloudFront access. So here's what's happened. We've now told CloudFront that you can now get access to the S3 bucket through OAC, Origin Access Controls. We've created that Origin Access Control, so we've created that special user that CloudFront can use to get access to the S3 buckets objects. Now that the user is created, we have the CloudFront side of permission settings sorted. We still have the S3 side of permission settings to sort out. We need to copy this policy, which is a policy that says CloudFront should now get access to your buckets objects through this policy. and then we need to add that policy to S3's bucket policy section. Okay, so shall we do that now? Okay, let's talk about it here. Once we set up our OAC, we still need to update our S3 buckets policy S3 buckets policy because its objects are still private to everyone, including CloudFront. Just creating the OAC does not mean that CloudFront automatically has access to S3. Okay, we'll click done, and we're almost done. You've just created an origin access control, and now we'll need to update the settings on our S3 bucket side too. And that's our last step before we're done for this project. I'm getting a great question from PTYT to say, did you say OAC creates a user? If so, is that an IAM user? Shall we find out together? Let us go into the IAM console. And let's see if we can find it. So let's see, is it a user like this? It's not really an IAM user that gets access to our AWS account. So what's going on here? What do you think it creates? Shall we search for CloudFront? Ooh, loading results. Doesn't seem to have much except for a policy. Interesting. Well, this policy, is it a policy called CloudFront Full Access? Not quite. This is more like a policy you'd use to grant access to CloudFront. OAC? Not quite. Identity providers? Not here either. Where do you think you might be able to see more about your OAC? How about we actually create that policy and then we can see more about it in a second. This is a very good question, PTYT. So let's explore this once we actually copy that policy over into S3, and then you'll see another hint for this question. For now though, I hope that answers your question that no, it doesn't just create an IAM admin user. As you can see here, under IAM users, you can't find the OAC. Cool. So in this last step, we will update our S3 buckets policy because this is required for our S3 bucket to allow access to CloudFront. Currently, our S3 buckets objects are still private to everyone. All right, so still in your CloudFront distribution settings page, we're gonna select copy policy here. And once that's copied, we're gonna select go to S3 bucket permissions. This is such a nice shortcut that takes you straight into your S3 bucket and opens up the permissions tab as well. Whoopsies. I think we're in the wrong place here. I think we should be in Ohio. Great. So I think what's happened here, and when I click S3 bucket permissions, is it actually went to the wrong region for some reason. But luckily, S3 took us to the right region straight away. So now that we're in the Ohio region, let us go into the permissions page over here, and let us scroll down to bucket policy. Okay, so we're gonna click edit to bucket policy. All right, and we're gonna paste the policy we copied over here. Whoa, so what's happened here? We copied a policy over here, we pasted it over here. What's going on? So what we're doing here is we're gonna go to S3 and say, hey, on your side, can you open up permissions to CloudFront? Can you let CloudFront into the buckets objects? Because right now, again, the buckets objects are completely private and access is denied for everyone, and we just want CloudFront to get access. So PTYT had a very good question just now around OAC, it's creating a user, so what's going on here? So what's actually happening is, as you can see in this policy, we're allowing S3, the S3 bucket is now going to allow access to CloudFront through this thing, a source ARN. Okay, ARN, AWS CloudFront, distribution, so on and so forth, like this. So what's actually happening is we're actually still creating, giving access to CloudFront directly and to the distribution directly as well. What happens when we created that OAC is it simply made this our CloudFront distribution an object or almost like a user, like an entity that you can grant permissions to. So before we created that OAC, this probably wouldn't have had taken effect because it means that this is not an entity that we could just immediately grant access to. You would need to create that OAC for your CloudFront distribution to have almost like a body for a policy to grant it access. Such an interesting concept to me because you would have assumed that you'd be able to give access to CloudFront straight away, but you actually need to create that OAC first so that CloudFront could even be an entity that is recognized by bucket policies, by S3 to give access to. I think we can actually talk a little bit more about OACs within the project guide as well, so that this part is explained a bit like more clearly, because that was a very good question, PTYT, and I think I'll add that to the project guide. Cool. We'll take a screenshot of this policy now, and then we'll go ahead and put that screenshot into our project guide. Nice. Let's drag that in now. And let's answer this question. Creating an OAC automatically gives me a policy that I can copy. I'm just going to change that to creating an OAC automatically gives us a policy we could copy, which grants our CloudFront distribution access to all the objects inside our S3 bucket. Nice work. We're going to select Save Changes over here for our policy, and then we're going to revisit that distribution's URL. Remember how it says access denied? Shall we refresh the tab and see what happens now? Oops, I think something's happened here. Oh. Let me try refreshing again. Oh, access is still denied. Why do you think that is? I have a theory. I hope it's not because of the name of my bucket, because I had a bucket with the exact same name that I only just deleted. And hopefully it's not confusing the two, which has happened before for me. Let's see. Is there a reason why access is still denied? Oh, could it be that I just need to save the changes here? I think I should. Let's save the changes for our CloudFront side. So now these settings are actually saved for CloudFront too. Access is still denied. Is our URL for the distribution still the same? It's still the same. It's still this one. Oh, is it because it's still deploying? Wow, it's taking its time to deploy. But what's happening is sometimes when your S3 bucket is still deploying, unfortunately it means it's going to take a little bit of time before some changes gets propagated and get shown live. Oh, I really want to show this change live though. I would love to have you all see the site getting distributed. Please work. I'm also gonna play around with the origin settings just in case. Oh, I hope this is all okay. Maybe it's also because the bucket name is a little... Could it also be because of the bucket name? I hope not. Oh. Okay, there was a bit of a change with my JSON policy there. I think things shifted a little bit, but I don't know if that's going to change the accessibility of the website. Oh! Why does that happen? My goodness! Oh my gosh, it got me nervous for a second. I don't know if you could see it on my face, but I was a little nervous. I was like, oh, but why couldn't we see it just now? It was all because the JSON policy itself had a bit of a formatting oopsie there. I think, what did it look like before this? Can I see what it looked like before? I think I just missed something in the policy. Maybe it was just missing something like this. Like the ending tag? Whatever the reason, there was definitely a formatting error there. And because of that, you couldn't see the distributed sites and the objects inside. Wow, I can't believe it. It was the JSON policy that almost tripped us up. That's crazy. But to see that it's now all clear, I feel very, very relieved. And if you run into an error, just know you can always find your way out. That was so much fun, actually. I'm so glad we ran into that live. I'm guessing someone else out there might have run into that same error. So if you do, please check your JSON policy. Check that it's formatted correctly. Check that you've copied the whole thing. Okay, so let us take a screenshot of the distributed site. As you can see now, the site is now publicly accessible. Actually, you know what? Let me copy the link to the site. I can see Ria, you're live right now. I wonder, Ria, if you can actually see the site's content right now. Would you like to try clicking on that distributed site's URL, opening it, letting me know whether you can see the same thing that I do? All right, I'm gonna upload the screenshot in the meantime. Yeah, and anyone else that's watching this live right now, try clicking on that link that I sent in the chat. Let me know if you can actually see the contents of that site. I wonder if it's gonna be quick, actually, because sometimes it takes a bit of time for CloudFront to actually propagate your content globally, but we'll give it a try anyway. All right, in the meantime, we have a secret mission here. So we've actually completed the main part of today's project, but let's spend a bit more time to really deepen our understanding of CloudFront, to really understand why CloudFront is so cool. Oh, Marzena says, yes, you can see it, and it's the same page. Yeah, that's very cool. I know Marzena is based very, very far away from New Zealand. Ria, Oh my gosh, you can see the same thing as well. You guys are, the both of you are based in opposite sides of the world. So to know that you can both see the site so quickly, it's always just such a miracle moment. It's very cool to see. And let us go into the secret mission, which is about comparing your S3 static website with CloudFront. And this is how we're really going to see the benefits of CloudFront over static website hosting. So let's jump into this secret mission. Oh, PTYT can see the same thing too. Oof, isn't that so cool? Very fun moment. All right, and in this secret mission, we're going to actually try to do the exact same thing, but with S3 static website hosting. And then we're going to do two things to compare CloudFront versus S3. All right. In this secret mission, we will enable S3 static website hosting to compare S3. In this secret mission, we will enable S3 static website hosting for the same website to compare S3 with CloudFront. This will show us the benefits of using CloudFront. Exciting. Great stuff. All done. Okay, so in the S3 console, we're going to head back into our bucket, okay, over here. We're going to select the Properties tab, and then we're going to scroll all the way down, select Edit for the static website hosting panel, and enable it. We're hosting a static website today, okay? We don't have any back-end code or processing that needs to happen. So we'll just go straight into saying that our index document is index.html. This is going to be the home page of our website, and we're going to save changes. I know I'm moving very quickly here, and that's because this is a pro project, so we do assume that you have some level of experience with using S3. If you're new to static website hosting and you want to get the full breakdown, please check out our project on hosting a static website. You can actually find it here, searching hosting a static website. Okay, and you can find it here. Very nice. Okay, so for our index document, we've entered index.html, we've saved our changes, and let's go and open our endpoint. Can we see it? Oof, that sucks. Access denied again, everyone. Why is it this time? Why is access denied this time? We have a bucket policy now. Why is access still denied? Okay. Chuck in your suggestions in the chat, and I'll type this out in the meantime. For our project extension, we're comparing S3 with CloudFront. We initially ran into an error with access. Again, this time because we enabled S3 static website hosting without making our objects publicly available. Okay, so enabling static website hosting means the objects themselves need to be publicly available too. So we're gonna need to change that, because what is in our bucket policy now? Are the objects publicly available? No, they're not. So according to our bucket policy, only one entity is given permission to the bucket's objects, and that entity is our CloudFront distribution. So static website hosting isn't exactly using that CloudFront distribution anymore. You're trying to just make your objects public to everyone that uses your own static website hosting link. So the public is going to try to access your bucket directly. Are they getting access? No. So we're going to have to change our bucket policy and include the general public this time. Okay, so back in our S3 console, let us scroll down to our bucket policy. So we're going to go to our permissions tab again. We're going to go to our bucket policy. We're going to edit that. Oh, I got ahead of myself. We actually are going to the block public access section. Sorry about that, team. So instead of going straight to the bucket policy, we're actually going to edit this setting first. And then we're going to unselect the block all public access setting. So this will make your website files, this will make it possible for your website files to be publicly accessible. Okay, so let's disable that so that public access is now possible. And then we'll type in confirm. Cool. So once that's done, let us, once that's done, actually let us check this again, the 403 forbidden page. Do you think that is enough? You know, turning off blocking public access, is that enough for us to get access to our buckets objects now? Yeah, as you can see, access is still denied. I've alluded to this just now, but it's because we also still need to change our bucket policy over here. So block all public access, this panel, is more about whether or not you can even make public access possible. Do you want to make it possible for you to make this bucket publicly accessible? You're now saying, yeah, it should be possible. Our buckets objects should be like publicly accessible if we want it to be. But the bucket policy is where you decide whether or not that is actually happening, whether or not that's true. So you can absolutely turn off this block public access setting. You can absolutely make it possible for your bucket to be publicly accessible, but you still need to use your bucket policy to actually change the permission settings of the objects inside. So because of that, you almost need to check two things. Is this block public access setting, is this off now? Okay, once it's off, have we changed the bucket policy? Are the settings for each object inside your bucket, is that changed now? So let's actually change this, okay? And we'll also type this in. We tried resolving this error by turning off block public access in our S3 bucket. We still ran into an error, 403 forbidden, when accessing the static website URL, because we still need to update the bucket policy. Currently, the policy still, maybe we can say because the bucket policy still doesn't allow public access to the objects yet. All done. I think there was an analogy that we used. When we first did the static website hosting project, and it was about how when you are here in the block public access setting and then you turn this off, it means that you're no longer hiding your bucket away from people. It means that when you turn this off, you're kind of like presenting your bucket to people and say like, hey, I can enable public access to the objects inside now, but the objects inside aren't actually public yet. The bucket policy is where you actually provide access to the buckets, to the objects themselves. So if you are turning this off, you're kind of like just presenting this bucket. You say like, hey, the objects inside, I can make them public. And the bucket policy is where you actually pull the objects out of the bucket and say, this is public now, this is public now, this is public now. So I hope that makes sense as to why you still need to edit the bucket policy itself. I'm getting so tongue-tied saying all of these words. Public, policy, bucket, access. All of these words are getting me tongue-tied. So thank you so much for your patience as well. So let us select edit in this section and let us add this policy here. Cool. So this policy is all about making your buckets objects public to the world. We don't want to turn this off. We don't want to close this statement, delete it, because we still want our CloudFront distribution to work. So what should we do instead? We're going to add this statement inside the policy. How do you add this statement? Look at that. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this clearly. This is one statement over here. This is one statement that says, give the CloudFront distribution access. Now we're going to add another statement that says, now allow the entire public to have access. Like this. Do you see how we have a little error here that says JSON syntax error? Uh-oh. What is the reason for this? Can you tell what that syntax error is? So between statements in JSON, you actually need to have a little comma. So you have multiple statements. You need to add a comma here so that JSON knows that there are two statements that it should be looking for. So that's why the comma exists. But you need to make sure that there is no comma at the very end of your section. So that's why there's no comma here. But you see, oh, we still have a JSON syntax error. Why do you think that is? Maybe we need to delete this final one because it's the last line in the section. Does that help? Ooh, that helps. Very nice. So I hope that helps you with understanding the formatting of JSON. You will definitely need a comma between lines in a section. Okay, that's why there's a comma here, comma here, comma here. But notice how there is no comma at the very last part of a section. No comma here. And look, there's no comma here as well at the very end. So yeah, with that done, we can actually save our changes. Great. Oh, an unexpected error occurred. That's okay. Let us do that one more time. Okay. Oh my gosh, why do you think the error occurred? I just did a big oopsie there, everyone. Why do you think that error occurred? I'm gonna give the chat a second, and for anyone that's watching this, give you a second to make a guess as to why there was an error. That's so silly of me. I'm gonna give you a second to figure this out as well. Do we know why we still ran into an error? It's okay if we can't tell. If you look closely at this line, the resource line, here we actually need to replace, your name and random numbers with the actual name. of our bucket. So Eric is correct. Eric says the bracket. Yeah, pretty much. It's because we don't actually have the proper name for our S3 bucket here. So my S3 bucket, what is it called? Do you remember? It's called NextWork 3-tier name, 1, 2, 3. So let me copy that. Okay, and let me paste that in here. Cool. And once that's done, I think we should be able to save our changes now. Yeah, all done. Oh my gosh, second little oopsie for myself. But it's always really fun to solve these live. And yeah, we have Vinny saying hello from London. Vinny, it's been a while. Good to see you again. Great stuff. So now that we have updated our bucket policy, shall we refresh our S3 website's URL? Cool, all done. So let me again copy this into the chat. Would you like to double check that you can actually see the contents of this website from your end too? Try clicking on this URL that I've sent to the chat and give it a go. Can you actually see this page as well when you open the URL? We could finally see our S3 hosted website when we updated our bucket policy. Marzena says you can see it. So cool. Eric can see it too. Very nice. Yeah, try clicking on the URL. Let me know if you can actually see it. And once you see that, we can actually do the next final secret mission together. It's going to be really fun. So we could finally see our S3 hosted static website when we updated our bucket policy to allow the public to access the bucket's objects. This worked because our bucket policy previously only allowed CloudFront access. So a change in S3 permissions So changing S3 permissions is required. Nice. Now let's go to the next question. Compare the permission settings between CloudFront and S3. So you've just seen now that to make S3 static website hosting work, we had to update the bucket policy. So how do we feel about the two different permission settings between CloudFront and S3? So compared to the permission settings for my CloudFront distribution, using S3 meant, what did it mean? This is going to be pretty important for us. Using S3 meant I had to enable public access to my bucket. Which one would you prefer? I preferred using CloudFront personally because it meant bucket access is restricted to CloudFront only, which is great for security. Awesome, everyone. Let us click done to finish up. And we have our final secret mission. Oh my God, I'm holding my breath right now because this final secret mission is really cool. Truly for the pros that are wanting to just do more and know more about CloudFront and the benefits of CloudFront. We're going to be talking about performance times here. So final one, this shouldn't take too much longer, about 5 minutes maybe, and let us go straight into it. So you probably still have the CloudFront URL in front of you. If you don't, I'm gonna add that to the chat again so you can open this. But now you should have two URLs in front of you. One is for that static website that you hosted over S3. And then the second one is the CloudFront distributed site. So you have two. We're gonna go back to our CloudFront hosted site over here. Okay, I'm gonna switch tabs so you can see it. So you can tell it's the CloudFront hosted site because the URL has .cloudfront.net. Okay, so have that open in front of you, .cloudfront.net. And then we're gonna open your browser's developer tools. You can do this by pressing F12 usually on your computer. So press F12, and that should open up your developer settings. Oh, I just realized you can't see it here. If F12 doesn't work for you, which suspiciously isn't working for me right now. Oh, there we go. It's working now. So once you press F12, you are now opening this window that's about your browser's developer tools. And these are built into most modern web browsers like Safari or Google Chrome. And this window gives you some options for you to inspect this website that you're looking at right now. So there are lots of different ways that you can inspect your website, but we're going to be doing a specific thing here. We're going to look at the network tab. So select the network tab like this. And once you've selected the network tab, I want you to refresh this over here. Refresh your site. And keep refreshing. All right. So as you can see, as I refreshed, this is so interesting to me. As I refreshed, you start to see a varying level of load times over here. And load times basically tell you how long it took for your browser to load this content. So I'm gonna refresh again. So interesting. So you can see that the load time is actually jumping between 69 milliseconds, which is super, super short, all the way to 1.5 seconds, which is a lot longer. I'm almost curious as to why the load time has jumped around so much. Let me try refreshing again just to see. Okay, now it's somewhere in the middle, 350 milliseconds to load a document here. Now I'm going to go over, and I'm going to go over to my S3 static website, and then I'm going to open up the network tab again, and let me refresh. What do we see now? Okay, keep refreshing. Keep refreshing. Keep refreshing. And just see how long it takes for your static website to be served to you. Okay, very cool. All right, so as you can see here, you can now start to compare how long it took for CloudFront versus S3 to serve your website to you. Over here, I will compare, file for file. So in this case, you can see that it took about 585 milliseconds for the main document, so the HTML file, to be served to me. Whereas over here for CloudFront, it can get up to like 1.5 seconds, but it can also be as low as, what is the lowest number I can find here? It can also be as low as 69 milliseconds, which is so much shorter. So the faster the load time, the quicker it is for users to access your website content. And the reason why we wanted to compare CloudFront with S3 static website hosting is as time goes on, the average for CloudFront is going to be much lower than S3 static website hosting. Why is that? It's because your content for CloudFront is served through an edge location, which is that server that's living very, very close to you. Whereas for S3 static website hosting, the content will be served from your from the from the S3 bucket, which is slightly further away. Now, something to note, like this is additional information for pros, is that caching can also happen on the browser side. So the first time your browser loads something, it might actually cache it into your browser. So the second time you visit that website, some of that content's already loaded. It's already saved in your browser, which automatically makes the time for loading that site the second time a lot faster. I wonder if that's already happening, which is the reason why the load times for our sites keeps fluctuating. All the way up to a second for this one, down to like 60 something milliseconds. So this is a fun way for you to really understand the performance for CloudFront. And something to take away here is that in general, CloudFront is going to give you lower performance time compared to Amazon S3. Okay, so you can even see it in the first load time as well. 184 milliseconds for the index.html, I think, compared to S3, which is like 965 milliseconds, which is a lot higher. The first time you load something is usually the best way to compare the load times, because the first time you load it just means it's not affected by caching as well. Browser side caching, I mean. Cool. Well, all that to say, let's take a screenshot of the CloudFront site's load time. Okay, over here. And let's drag that into our documentation. What did you think about the concept of load times? Was that a bit too much? Was that a good amount of challenge? Did you already know this? Let us know in the chat. Okay, so let's talk about it here. Load time means how long it takes for our browser to receive content Alright, so load time means how long it takes for our browser to receive the requested content and display it for the user. The load times for the CloudFront site were faster than the S3 site because content is cached from edge locations. Great stuff. A business would prefer CloudFront when S3 static website hosting might be sufficient. When would you actually use CloudFront, and when would you use S3 static website hosting? A business would prefer CloudFront when performance, load times are important to them. For example, Netflix, performance and load time is going to be so important because you're constantly streaming content to users around the world. So that's when CloudFront is going to be really handy there, because if they all had to come from a central location, a central bucket, that's when streaming might be incredibly slow for people who are far away from the bucket that is hosted at, the bucket that's hosting that content. And yeah, S3 static website hosting might be sufficient when you are using when you are hosting a simple website without performance load time requirements. Great stuff. All done, team. So let us delete our resources before we go for this project today. We'll just need to make sure to delete the CloudFront distribution and the S3 bucket. So one thing to do, or one thing to remember before you go ahead and delete everything, is that please make sure to delete the distribution first before you delete the S3 bucket. It can cause a few errors if you delete the bucket first. So to delete the distribution, we're going to go over to CloudFront, and then we're going to select our distribution. And you'll need to, I'm going to zoom out so you can see this. So you'll need to select your distribution and disable it like this. and then you're gonna need to select it again and delete it. Uh-oh, the delete button isn't working. Why can't we delete it? So if the delete option isn't available, it means CloudFront is still propagating your distribution, or it's still propagating your changes over to edge locations. You might need to wait a few minutes until a new timestamp appears under the last modified tab. Oh, why can't can I open this? So you need to wait until it goes from deploying to an actual timestamp. So what I have prepared for you here is something else, like another distribution I prepared before this live, that gives you what it looks like after a few minutes. You're gonna see that there's gonna be a timestamp. It's gonna go under the last modified. It no longer says deploying, and then you can delete it straight away like this. Okay. Great work, team. So once you delete your distribution, don't forget, you just have to wait a few minutes for the delete button to work. But once you delete that distribution, you can go over to your S3 bucket. Okay, and then select your bucket. Please empty it first. Okay, type permanently delete here, and then delete the bucket itself. I'm going to be keeping my bucket actually, because as you can see, the actual distribution itself is still it still hasn't been deleted yet. This is the actual distribution I created in this project. So if I were to delete my bucket, I'm technically deleting the bucket first before the distribution, and that would definitely cause a few errors for the distribution side. So I'm going to keep it as it is, but I hope that helps with going through the instructions for deleting your distribution and deleting your S3 bucket. All right, team, let's finish up now. What were services that we used in this project today? Services we used include Amazon S3 and Amazon CloudFront. Key concepts we learned include content delivery network, distributions. What else did we learn? Origin access control, performance load times, S3 static website hosting versus CloudFront as well. So good. This project took us approximately 2 hours, including all of the demos. The most challenging part probably was understanding origin access controls. I would say this is probably the hardest part, but it was most rewarding to compare performance load times and see CloudFront outperforming S3. Really cool. What about you? What was your favorite part about this project today? I hope you enjoyed it. I know it can get a bit technical near the end, but let us know, was it the right challenge level for you? Was it too much? Are you actually ready for more? This really helps us with deciding the difficulty or challenge levels for each of our projects too. We did this project today to learn about CloudFront and content delivery. This project met our goals, and we've successfully built the presentation tier of a 3-tier architecture. Very nice. And that's a wrap, everyone. You've learned how to create and manage S3 buckets. You've learned how to upload files to S3, set up a CloudFront distribution, secure your S3 bucket, even compare S3 static website hosting with CloudFront. That is a lot of learnings. My goodness. So cool, everyone. You absolutely are a 3-tier master in the making. Congrats. Oh, I just realized this is way too zoomed in. There you go. Sorry about that, team. You're absolutely a 3-tier master in the making. Can't wait to build out the 2 other tiers with you and to set up a fully functioning application, a fully functioning solution using 3-tier architecture. Let us select mission accomplished for this project. Oh, something went wrong. That's okay, team. This happens sometimes when there is an error on the documentation side, but let me try just resubmitting any questions that need to be submitted again. So as you can see, I can easily use the contents bar to see which questions still need to be submitted again, which are okay. And let me select this one again. Let me select done again. Okay. Let us select step 4. Select done again. Okay. And let us select one other step. I think there was a question in step 5 that needs to be submitted. That's okay. All right, I think we just have 2 more questions that need to be submitted again. Let us get that done. Crushed it. Done. What else? There's also this one left. Shall we submit this one too? All done. Okay, let me give this a go. Shall we give this a go again? Let's try selecting mission accomplished. Nice work, everyone. All right, so we successfully completed this project, and we can download our documentation as well. Oh, Marzena and Ria says there might be an error with the link to the project. Let me resolve that straight away, everyone. I think sometimes the URL could have a bit of a tricky error there. So let me fix that for you straight away after this live. So sorry about that, team. And once we've downloaded the documentation, we can even open it over here. Check it out. Okay, very cool. You can see that all of my responses are laid out across 9 pages of this documentation, which is awesome. Whew, even the load times are shown here too. So this is awesome documentation. I can't believe we pulled all this together in just 2 hours. We did an entire project, wrote the entire documentation for it, and there's even a LinkedIn post for us to use. So let's check out that LinkedIn post. Very nice. There's even a LinkedIn post ready for us to post about our project right away. Let's add that document. Add what we've created, and you can even give it a title. Let's call it Website Delivery with CloudFront. Oof, I should zoom in. Okay, and then when it's all uploaded, we can make sure we're tagging NextWork. So let's go at NextWork. And it's ready to post. All right, and then we can click post and we're all done. All right, everyone. Thank you for the lovely message. Vinny says, thank you for another beautiful content. Glad I caught some of it. Could you do something around observability in Kubernetes and deploying it using Terraform? Ooh, very specific request, Vinny. We actually have something on Kubernetes and Terraform to connect those two. It's going to be really fun. So great suggestion. Ria says, this is great. I really enjoyed this with the rest of the Nexters. I don't know if there's a nickname for us yet. Oh, that's so cute, Ria. We actually call ourselves NextWorkers, but I don't say that enough. Maybe I should say it more. Absolutely. I would love to do that. I think I should start calling us NextWorkers a little bit more. But yeah, thank you so much, Ria. It was great to have you here as well. You've been awesome, so engaging in the chat and also checking out all the URLs and all the links too. This is more of a, I love how this project starts off very, very beginner friendly. And when there's space to be a bit more challenging, it definitely, you can do something more challenging and more technical with this too. All right, everyone, that brings us to a close for this project demo. I can't wait to see how you guys find this project. Please post your documentation, tag us when you create this. We love seeing it all. We'll see you in the next project where we're actually going to be doing the logic tier of our 3-tier architecture. So fun. Ria likes the term NextWorkers. Thank you so much, Ria. All right, I'll be signing off now, but I can't wait to stay in touch over the community too. I'll see you, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much.